When people think of Colombian cartels, the infamous Medellin cartel and its ruthless leader, Pablo Escobar, are often the first names that come to mind. But what if I told you that during the height of Escobar's reign, there was another cartel just as powerful, yet far more strategic? The worst nightmare of Pablo Escobar, the Cali Cartel. While Escobar built his empire through terror and bloodshed, Cali preferred a different approach: corruption over bullets. Instead of waging war on politicians and law enforcement, they bought them. Every year, the Cali Cartel spent nearly $1 billion on bribes, ensuring that judges, police officers, and even Colombian presidents were in their pocket. This is why they earned the nickname, the Gentlemen of Cali. But don't be fooled behind their polished image. They were just as dangerous. At their peak, the Cali Cartel controlled 90% of the cocaine flowing into the United States and nearly 80% of Europe's supply, generating $20 billion in annual revenue. According to the DEA, they were the most powerful criminal organization in history, surpassing even Medellin. Yet, sharing the same territory as Pablo Escobar meant a war was inevitable. Between 1988 and 1993, the rivalry between these two titans of crime turned Colombia into a battlefield. Bombings, assassinations, and kidnappings engulfed the nation in a brutal conflict that would shape the future of the drug trade forever. This is the untold story of the Cali Cartel. The Cali Cartel was led by 4 kingpins, but its roots can be traced back to the Rodríguez Orejuela brothers, Gilberto and Miguel, along with their childhood friend, José Chepe Santacruz Londoño. Gilberto, born in 1939, was a master strategist, earning the nickname the chess player for always staying a step ahead of his enemies. His younger brother Miguel, born in 1943, was known for his ruthless efficiency in handling cartel operations. The brothers grew up in Cali, Colombia's third largest city. Gilberto dropped out of school at 10 years old to help support his family, eventually working as a pharmacy delivery boy. This job exposed him to the underground world of crime, where he quickly saw an opportunity. By 25, he owned his own pharmacy, trafficking stolen medical supplies to increase profits. Miguel soon joined him, and together, they expanded their criminal operations. It wasn't long before Chepe, their fearless and charismatic childhood friend, proposed an even bigger idea: kidnappings. The trio formed a gang called Los Chemas, specializing in high-profile abductions. One ransom deal alone earned them 12 million pesos, nearly $1 million at the time. But kidnapping was just the beginning. As the cocaine trade exploded in the 1970s, the Rodríguez Orejuela brothers and Chepe saw an opportunity to build something far greater, a criminal empire that would soon challenge Pablo Escobar himself. Their paths then crossed with Benjamin Herrera Zuleta, a drug trafficker considered one of the pioneers of Colombia's drug trade. Initially, they dabbled in marijuana trafficking before shifting to cocaine, which proved far more lucrative. It didn't take long for them to dominate Cali's drug trade, but their ambitions extended far beyond. Armed with just 1 kilo of cocaine, they embarked on their first trip to the United States. The group traveled through Central America and reached the Texas border, unaware they had entered the territory of a powerful Mexican drug lord, Pablo Acosta Villarreal. Had he discovered them, their fate might have been different, but fortune favored them, and they crossed into the US without incident. Their destination was New York. Upon arrival, they were stunned by the demand for their product. Post-Vietnam War American society had a growing appetite for drugs, particularly cocaine. In the 1970s, a kilo of cocaine in New York sold for $50,000 to $60,000. Realizing the enormous potential, they wasted no time producing more, making cocaine trafficking their primary business. As money poured in and their operation expanded, the Cali Cartel was officially born. Cocaine became the backbone of their empire, structured into independent cells to prevent authorities from tracing operations back to the leadership. Chepe oversaw cocaine distribution across the Americas, particularly in New York, one of their most profitable markets. Shipments reached nightclubs, bars, and discos through various smuggling routes. Gilberto acted as the mastermind and CEO, while his younger brother Miguel, known as Don Miguel, or El Señor, was his second in command. A man of few words, Miguel managed finances, security, shipments, and bribery operations. The fourth and youngest kingpin, Hélmer Pacho Herrera, joined the cartel's executive ranks in 1983. A discreet trafficker, he never gave interviews and kept a low profile, yet he was also the cartel's most violent enforcer. Openly homosexual, an unusual trait in the criminal underworld, he was fully accepted by the other leaders because of his immense contributions. Pacho expanded the cartel's smuggling routes through Mexico, significantly increasing their profits. He also managed security, dealing with threats in the most ruthless ways imaginable. By the 1980s, Cali had grown to over 1 million residents, large enough for each kingpin to control their own territory. The Rodríguez Orejuela brothers ruled the city center and an affluent southern suburb. Chepe dominated the south, and Pacho controlled the north. In essence, the city belonged to them. Nothing happened in Cali without their knowledge. They owned the local telephone company, employed thousands of taxi drivers, and operated an extensive bribery network that ensured they could buy off anyone. They tracked every newcomer, especially Americans who could be DEA agents, reporting any suspicious individuals immediately. Unlike many drug lords, the Rodríguez Orejuela brothers didn't indulge in excessive drinking or drug use. Their only addiction was soccer, owning one of Cali's biggest soccer clubs. In a short time, M19 achieved what the Colombian government had struggled with for years. Eventually, they apologized to Pablo Escobar and the Ochoa brothers and released their hostages. This led to a strong alliance between Colombia's drug lords, particularly the Cali and Medellin cartels. They pooled their resources and collaborated on drug trafficking to the United States, where demand was so high that they could coexist without unnecessary wars. After all, why fight each other when they had the CIA on their side? Yes, the CIA. In the early 1980s, the US government prioritized fighting heroin and marijuana trafficking while also aiming to curb the spread of communism. The CIA feared that cocaine production could fall into the hands of communist groups in Central and South America, so they chose to support drug traffickers instead. In return, the cartels enjoyed protection and a steady supply of American weapons to fight against communist paramilitary groups. With the Cali and Medellin cartels working with the CIA, a war between them seemed unthinkable. Gilberto Rodríguez and Jorge Luis Ochoa of the Medellin cartel were even close friends at the time. They co-owned a Panamanian bank used for laundering cartel money and explored drug trafficking opportunities in Europe together. At that point, nothing indicated an impending conflict between the two factions. That was, of course, until Pablo Escobar decided to enter politics. It was arguably his biggest mistake. Controlling an entire country by directly involving himself in politics wasn't a bad idea, but he underestimated the challenge, especially the determination of one man who would go to great lengths to ruin his political career. When Escobar was elected as a congressman in 1982, Colombia's Minister of Justice, Rodrigo Lara Bonilla, confronted him in Congress, accusing him of criminal activities and threatening him with the one thing drug lords feared most: extradition to the United States. A few months later, Luis Carlos Galán, leader of the Liberal Party to which Escobar belonged, expelled him, shattering his political ambitions. In January 1984, Pablo withdrew from politics. 3 months later, seeking revenge, he ordered the assassination of Lara Bonilla. The murder attracted intense attention from Washington and the media. Under mounting pressure, the Colombian government signed an extradition treaty, allowing drug traffickers to be prosecuted and imprisoned in the US. This was a pivotal moment in the war against Colombia's cartels, including the Cali Cartel, which now faced the same threat. However, unlike Escobar, they sought to avoid drawing attention. Pablo, on the other hand, continued his campaign of revenge. His next target was Luis Carlos Galán, the man who had expelled him from politics and the leading candidate in the 1990 Colombian elections. Galán was a strong advocate of extradition, making him Escobar's enemy. On August 18, 1989, Escobar's men assassinated him at a campaign rally. But Escobar wasn't finished. Later that year, he set his sights on Galán's successor, Cesar Gaviria. His men planted a bomb on a plane Gaviria was supposed to be on. The explosion killed 107 people, including 2 Americans, but Gaviria survived. He had missed the flight that day. With the deaths of U.S. citizens, the U.S. government intervened directly. As media attention on Escobar and Colombia's drug cartels intensified, the Cali Cartel wanted to stay far away from the chaos he had unleashed. Since Escobar kept seeking economic and military help from other cartels to continue his war against the Colombian state, many complied out of fear, but the Cali Cartel refused. They believed the war against the government should be fought through judicial means, not violence. The gentlemen of Cali wanted to remain discreet, operating in the shadows, with money as their only true interest. Unlike Escobar, who buried his fortune and lost millions to water damage and rats, they invested immediately in commercial ventures, particularly real estate, which led to a real estate boom in Cali and increased their popularity among locals. At this time, the Cali Cartel aimed to legitimize their fortune and slowly transition out of drug trafficking. They knew their empire wouldn't last forever and sought to move into legal businesses. However, Escobar's actions brought immense scrutiny to Colombian drug traffickers, forcing the Cali bosses to look for an exit strategy. But their plans were soon derailed. Pablo Escobar was about to start a war that would shake Colombia to its core. By the end of 1986, tensions between Cali and Medellin had reached their breaking point. Escobar called a meeting with Colombia's top traffickers to propose a super cartel under his leadership. With more money and power at stake, he demanded control over every shipment and a 30% cut from all cargo. This proposal was met with resistance, especially from the Cali bosses, who rejected the idea outright. Their lack of enthusiasm enraged Escobar, who stormed out, cursing them and warning of war. Soon after, both cartels began exposing each other's shipments to the DEA. Escobar's fury grew when he discovered the Cali Cartel had shifted its smuggling route from Florida to Mexico, forging an alliance with the Guadalajara Cartel. Their competition for control over the New York cocaine market escalated, but the breaking point came with an incident involving Pacho Herrera in late 1987. The conflict started in New York when a dispute over a woman led to a murder. Seeking revenge, the victim's allies turned to Escobar for help, and he ordered the killer's execution. Desperate, the murderer sought protection from his former prison mate, Pacho Herrera, one of the Cali bosses. Pacho intervened, blocking Escobar's order. This defiance was an unforgivable insult to Escobar's authority, and he declared that if Pacho insisted on protecting the man, he too would die. The Cali bosses gathered and decided to defend their own. When Gilberto Rodríguez tried reasoning with Escobar, stating that a single death wasn't worth a war, Escobar cut him off, declaring, "Then this is war, and I'm going to kill every one of you sons of bitches." The war against Medellin was officially declared. Faced with this new reality, the Rodríguez Orejuela brothers abandoned their plans to legitimize their empire and doubled down on drug trafficking, because to fight Medellin and defeat Pablo Escobar, they needed money. Lots of money. Cali struck first. On January 13, 1988, they targeted Escobar's permanent residence, the Monaco building, where his family lived. That morning, one of Cali's top assassins parked a car filled with dynamite beneath the 8-story building. At 5:30 a.m., the bomb exploded, its shockwave heard over a 3-kilometer radius, shattering windows throughout the neighborhood and leaving a 3-meter-deep crater in the street. 2 night watchmen were killed, and Escobar's 4-year-old daughter lost hearing in one ear. But Pablo himself was unharmed. He wasn't even in the building that day. Furious, he interrogated the bomb maker, confirming that the Cali Cartel was responsible. Escobar retaliated swiftly. He ordered bombings on a national chain of pharmacies owned by the Rodríguez Orejuela family, key to laundering their money. The war intensified. Cali sent 7 assassins to kill Escobar, but within a week, their dismembered bodies were sent back in boxes. Medellin had made a brutal statement. Later that year, an explosion devastated 3 upscale homes in Cali. Miguel Rodríguez was the target. Luckily for him, the bomb detonated 800 meters from his residence, killing the two assassins carrying out the attack. Determined to kill Escobar, the Cali bosses turned to their counter-surveillance expert, Jorge Salcedo. Salcedo was a local mercenary recruited by the Rodríguez Orejuela brothers to protect them from Escobar's hitmen. Before working for the cartel, he saw himself as a businessman rather than a criminal and had no interest in drug trafficking. But when he met the Cali bosses, their fear of Escobar was evident despite their wealth and power. They despised him, and when they mentioned Rodrigo Lara Bonilla, a former Colombian minister of justice assassinated by Escobar, Salcedo's own anger resurfaced. Bonilla had been his classmate and friend, and his murder fueled a deep resentment. The Cali bosses wasted no time. Miguel Rodríguez told Salcedo plainly, "We want Pablo dead, and we want you and your British commanders to kill him." British mercenaries had previously worked with Salcedo, recruited under the guise of fighting communism, but had instead found themselves in the middle of Colombia's violent cartel wars. David Tompkins and his team were well-paid mercenaries, eager for more work in Colombia. In February 1989, Tompkins received a call from Jorge Salcedo. "Are you ready for another mission?" Salcedo asked. "Yes, subject to terms and conditions," Tompkins replied. Days later, Tompkins and his men arrived in Colombia with a clear objective: kill Pablo Escobar. The Cali bosses provided all the necessary equipment, and the promise of a $3 million reward fueled their determination. Tompkins wasted no time and flew over Escobar's massive property, Hacienda Nápoles, spanning nearly 3,000 hectares. Observing its layout, he realized how difficult it would be to reach Escobar. He devised a plan to land a helicopter on the estate's tennis court, disguising themselves as police officers, since authorities had never been attacked while visiting the property. A Huey helicopter was provided, repainted to resemble one used by Colombian forces. Meanwhile, the British mercenaries trained relentlessly, perfecting their attack strategy while the Cali Cartel worked to pinpoint Escobar's exact location. Months passed with no sign of Escobar, but then a coded message came through. Pablo was spotted in his pool at Hacienda Nápoles. However, an unexpected problem arose. Tompkins and his team were supposed to have 2 helicopters, but were left with only 1. For safety reasons, they refused to proceed. But Gilberto Rodríguez Orejuela wasn't willing to back down. He made a last-minute change. After the mercenaries landed and launched the attack, a plane carrying over a dozen of Pacho Herrera's hitmen would arrive to reinforce them. With explosives and ammunition loaded, the helicopter took off. As they neared their target, a sudden storm struck. Violent winds rocked the aircraft, and dense clouds reduced visibility. The helicopter carrying Tompkins and his team crashed into a mountainside. The pilot was killed, and most of the mercenaries suffered serious injuries. The mission was a failure, forcing the Cali Cartel to rethink its strategy. However, Pablo remained unaware of the attempted assassination. Meanwhile, Escobar faced increasing pressure from Colombian authorities. The murder of politician Luis Carlos Galán had triggered a massive crackdown. Over 10,000 suspected drug traffickers were arrested, and the government, with U.S. assistance, intensified its war on the cartels. This impacted not only Escobar, but also the Cali Cartel, which lost over 80 planes, significantly disrupting its operations. As the surviving mercenaries recovered, many abandoned the mission and returned home, some even leaking details to the media, making the failed assassination attempt public. The Rodríguez Orejuela brothers, however, saw it differently. The news itself was a message to Escobar. Cali was coming for him. But Escobar, now relentlessly pursued by authorities, became even more dangerous. On December 6, 1989, he detonated a truck bomb with half a ton of explosives at the DAS headquarters in Bogotá, escalating his war against the Colombian state. The building housed Colombian intelligence services, along with the FBI and CIA. The attack left 52 dead and over 1,000 injured. During a security meeting, Miguel expressed his disbelief. How could one man be so insane? The Medellin cartel then set its sights on Pacho Herrera, making him their primary target. On September 25, 1990, as Pacho played football with his men, a group of assassins armed with automatic rifles stormed the field, unleashing a hail of bullets. Players abandoned the game, running for their lives. By sheer luck, Pacho managed to escape, but nearly 20 others were killed that day. He vowed revenge, a promise he kept when he captured one of the attackers. The captive was taken to Pacho's ranch, where he met a brutal fate. His legs were tied to one vehicle, his arms to another. Kicked and spat on, the engines revved, and the vehicles began pulling in opposite directions, slowly tearing him apart. For half an hour, the remains were dragged until the man stopped breathing. It was a clear message. The gentleman of Cali could be just as ruthless as Escobar when provoked. In 1991, Escobar escalated his pressure on the government by kidnapping members of Colombia's elite. One hostage was a well-known television presenter and the daughter of a former president. Fearing a violent rescue attempt, her family pleaded with authorities not to intervene, knowing the government's history of indiscriminately killing hostages during raids. Despite this, an operation was launched, resulting in her tragic death. Her devastated mother blamed not only the traffickers, but also the president, who was left with no choice but to negotiate. With the help of a televangelist, a deal was struck. Escobar agreed to surrender, but only if the extradition treaty was abandoned. The government, desperate to end the violence, agreed. Pablo turned himself in, but on his own terms. He was placed in La Catedral, a prison he designed himself, controlling every aspect of his incarceration. No one could enter without his approval. This fortress made it nearly impossible for the Cali bosses to get to him. Jesus Salo was called to a meeting with Miguel and Gilberto Rodríguez Orejuela, who revealed their audacious plan to bomb La Catedral from the air. Salo was stunned. Using mercenaries for such a high-risk mission seemed reckless, but the brothers were excited and ignored his hesitation. Reluctantly, Salo agreed and traveled to El Salvador, where he struck a deal with a Salvadoran army general to buy 4 Mk-82 bombs for nearly $500,000. However, the operation fell apart before it even began. Authorities discovered some of the bombs before they could be transported. The mission failed, some conspirators were arrested, and the plot was exposed by international media. With their aerial attack plan ruined, the Cali bosses turned to another strategy, this time with an unexpected ally, the Colombian government. The saying, "the enemy of my enemy is my friend," had never been truer. The Cali Cartel allied with Search Block, an elite government task force dedicated to capturing Escobar. With their vast intelligence network, rivaling even Cold War spy agencies, the Cali Cartel provided crucial information on Escobar's movements. The war was shifting in Cali's favor. They took control of key smuggling routes, cutting into Medellin's profits. Meanwhile, Escobar's empire crumbled. He became paranoid, accusing his own men of stealing from him. Some were executed, others defected. The failed bombing attempt on La Catedral only deepened the cracks in his organization. Worse still, rumors spread that Escobar was about to be transferred to a real prison, stripping him of the luxury and power he had inside La Catedral. It was time to escape and disappear into the jungle. Sensing their enemy's weakness, the Cali Cartel moved in for the final blow. They formed a self-defense group called Los Pepes, an acronym in Spanish meaning people persecuted by Pablo Escobar. Though funded by the Cali Cartel, Los Pepes also had backing from the Castaño brothers, violent Colombian paramilitaries who despised Escobar, as well as the CIA former Medellin cartel allies who knew Escobar's hideouts also joined, alongside police officers and military personnel seeking revenge for colleagues killed by him. With such a force against him, Escobar's days were numbered. By 1993, his empire had crumbled, and many of his men were dead. Now, hiding in Medellin with only one loyal bodyguard, he was constantly on the run. On December 2nd, 1993, at 3 p.m., he made a phone call to his family. a fatal mistake. The call was traced, and within minutes, heavily armed men surrounded his hideout. Escobar attempted to flee across the rooftops, but police opened fire. "Viva Colombia! We've just killed Pablo Escobar." With his death, the Medellin cartel was finished. To celebrate their victory, the Rodríguez Orejuela brothers threw a massive party in Cali. Now, they controlled 90% of Colombia's cocaine trade, making billions of dollars per year. But more than wealth, they gained something even more valuable: public and political favor. Exhausted by years of Escobar's bombings and violence, both the Colombian people and government saw them as the lesser evil. Seizing the opportunity, the Cali bosses sought to negotiate their surrender with the Attorney General. Their proposal? They would quit drug trafficking and serve light prison sentences in exchange for amnesty, keeping their wealth and businesses intact. But their plan hit a wall. The Attorney General refused. A man driving an old Volkswagen couldn't be bribed so easily. In reality, the negotiations were a desperate attempt to avoid U.S. intervention. With Escobar gone, Washington's next target was clear: the Cali Cartel. The Cold War was over. Saddam Hussein had been pushed out of Kuwait. Noriega was in prison, and now Escobar was dead. The U.S. needed a new enemy. Under growing pressure, the Colombian government prepared to dismantle the cartel. By March 1994, the DEA's elite task force, once stationed in Medellin to hunt Escobar, was relocated to Cali. Their new mission? Capture the 4 cartel bosses. But the Cali leaders had their own plan. They bought the presidency. In the 1994 elections, they funded the Liberal Party candidate Ernesto Samper's campaign with $6 million. When Samper won, the Cali bosses celebrated, "We did it. We bought a president." They expected investigations into their cartel to disappear, but the DEA retaliated. Determined to take them down, they leaked phone recordings of cartel leaders discussing a $2 million bribe for Samper's campaign. Overnight, the cartel's political victory turned into a scandal. Washington threatened to cut off aid to Colombia, forcing Samper to restore his credibility. To save his presidency, he turned against the cartel, pledging to arrest the Rodríguez Orejuela brothers. Now public enemies, the Cali bosses faced relentless police raids. Rewards of over $1 million were offered for their capture. The machine was in motion. On June 9, 1995, police and DEA agents surrounded a secret residence where Gilberto Rodríguez Orejuela was hiding. After an hour-long search, they discovered a hidden compartment. "Don't kill me. I'm a man of peace," he pleaded. His arrest was celebrated by President Samper, who toasted with champagne, a move that enraged Miguel, who had funded Samper's campaign. "Damn that son of a he roared. Gilberto's capture signaled the beginning of the end. Soon after, Jorge Salcedo, the cartel's security chief, realizing the cartel was doomed, switched sides. He met with DEA agents and helped devise a plan to capture Miguel Rodríguez Orejuela. Around the same time, Chepe Santacruz Londoño, with a $625,000 bounty on his head, was caught in a Bogotá restaurant. Miguel was next. With inside information from Salcedo, the DEA tracked him down, delivering another major blow to the cartel. The last boss standing was Pacho Herrera, the most recent addition to the leadership. Unlike the others, he surrendered, hoping to receive leniency in exchange for information. He provided details on cartel members, including his own relatives. And just like that, the Cali cartel's empire collapsed. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more related videos. See you in the next video.